So this is Emotional Gymnastics for Real Estate, and we are talking about building partnerships or burning bridges. We thought this was a really fun and appropriate topic given the conditions of the market and what's been going on. This is going to be focused more today on agent to agent dynamics, although some of the same techniques we talk about, some of the same concepts can definitely apply to connections with clients, buyers and sellers. But I'm Jesse Zagorski. I'm in San Diego, and my co-host is Jim Godwin, who is in Kansas City. Say what's up, Jim.
How you guys doing?
I got a train going by outside, so I'll have you. Too late. The train's already going. So there you go. Jim, I was going to have you talk about, before we dive into burning bridges and building partnerships, what is your background? Like, how did you learn? Because you're such a partnership guy. No matter how stressful things get, I feel like you always focus on how do we come to win-win? How do we build this? Were you wired that way, or did you learn it over time?
No, I've always been pretty empathetic. Even as a kid growing up, I was always rooting for the underdog, and wanting to. I was the person that was known as the connector of groups. Four different sets of groups of people. I would be the one friend between them. And then I would be the one trying to get those groups of people to try to connect with each other. Yep. That doesn't always go that well.
All right. So that's why you and I get along so well. All right. So we're going to see if we can take, because both of us are naturally that way, and give you guys some techniques that will help you. And we'll want to start by taking the framework of another industry. So we were talking about offline attorneys, lawyers, and how in the courtroom, they will negotiate hard with each other. They will go out, but then as soon as they're outside the courtroom, most attorneys typically are friendly. They'll go have a drink, they'll go to happy hour, they'll hang out, they'll be friends. And in real estate, especially given the low inventory, what's going on, agents tend to get their smirkles and their clicks of who they know and they're friends with. But overall, I feel like during all these negotiations, everything that goes on, we're going to negotiate hard, we're going to push, but then things get really messy after. Do you find that, Jim? And what can we do to avoid that sort of thing happening? What do you think?
I do find that. Maybe a better question is to figure out why, right? First. Okay. Maybe it's because it's because there's so many real estate agents that there's a lot of fear that when you're in, if something happens with this transaction, then you may not get paid on it because there's somebody else that can come and scoop it right up from you. And that's probably not something that happens very often in the attorney world. And there's definitely a lot more real estate agents than attorneys. So maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. What do you think?
It could be. And that's interesting because a lot of the negative emotion cycles we talk about on this web series does stem from fear, from a place of loss, right? So if you're looking at, and it's not necessarily a scarcity mindset, but if you're looking at it from like a fear or sense of loss, I could absolutely see that. But I feel like almost it's more that agents tend to take things personally. And I have some friends who are attorneys. I mean, I've never been an attorney. I don't even play one on TV. But like, if you take agents, most of the times I've seen deals go badly, it's because really one of the agents takes it personally, as opposed to saying, look, I know I have a duty to my client. I want the best thing for the client, but they're almost treating it like it's a personal attack on them. Versus attorneys, I think they make that separation where you do what you do in the courtroom because it's part of your job, knowing that you are separate. It's not necessarily a personal attack on you. Do you find people taking it personally?
Oh yeah, more often than not. I don't know that there's a whole lot of agents that don't take it personally.
Okay, so if you find that someone on the other side is taking something personally, how do you help them to step back, to reset? Because once someone starts taking it personally, I feel like I literally just watched on a Zoom I was on earlier today. Something started spiraling a little bit out of control because people were taking things personally. How do you bring someone back from that? How do you reset? What do you usually do?
The best trick that I've ever found, and this works in every aspect of your life, in every situation, the best thing to do is to hit it head on and ask the question. If you feel like something is going a certain way and you say to yourself, this person is taking this personally, the only thing left to do at that point is to confront it. and to say to them, I get the sense that you're taking this personally. What can we do to work through this right now so that we can move past it and get to the thing that really matters?
Ooh, that's really good.
Mm-hmm. Because otherwise, you'll never really get to the thing that you want to get to. You're always going to be talking about the taking it personal, because that's the listening of the other person. That's what they're hearing. They're not hearing you talking about the problem or about your client or about fixing it. They're hearing in your conversation, I'm taking this personally, so that's the reaction you're going to get.
I love it. I love it. So it's just being present to it and addressing it, because then, I mean, it's almost like taking a little air out of the tire. So then you can, right? It's like it's getting overinflated. It's kind of the visual I'm coming up with.
Yeah,
describing it.
Because when somebody is taking something personally like that, what else is happening? What else is happening is that their defenses are up. So when the defenses are up, you're not really having a clear, crisp communication. But as soon as you address something like that, the wall immediately comes down.
Yeah,
because there's nothing to defend anymore.
Interesting. So, and this is what I find when we have these discussions. Whenever I talk to realtors, I mean, everyone always says, "I want to build partnerships." Right? Like, yeah, we know there's a small industry; these deals go around. So then, how do we end up in so many situations where agents on the other side? Is it because the agents that are on these webinars are the ones that are emotionally aware and developing their skills, or is it really just every single human being is susceptible to that, or is in danger of being sucked in and taking something personally?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of there's all of that. I don't think there's not a whole lot of training in our industry about this type of thing. It seems to be a lot more lately that there's a lot of quote unquote mindset training in our business, but that didn't happen for a long time. It was just about getting a deal done. And so you have a lot of people for a lot of years that's all that they knew to do. And that's totally changing, because the people that we work with, our clients, don't put up with it.
Right. I mean, and if someone were to say to you, and this is curious about intentions, if you got an offer from someone, say you're on the listing side, and they were talking about, look, my goal is to really build a partnership, work together. Do you take it at face value? Does it sound at this point like just things that are thrown around, or does it really help to build that? Like, are the words enough, or is there actually more that you have to do in actions as the transaction goes on to build that partnership?
I usually can tell pretty quickly if somebody has meaning behind what they're saying. Not just in the way that they're saying it and how they're communicating it to me, but also very quickly that stuff goes away if you're not really practicing it. If it's just kind of hollow, you can tell pretty quickly.
Right. And I'm going to go on record. I don't think there's a lot of agents out there that their goal is to burn bridges. I just think in this market,
I don't think they're aware, or have the training or the tools for it.
Yeah. I mean, you were telling me before we started, you had lost a few deals in the last month, right? Deals that unraveled for various reasons.
This week, I lost just over $2.5 million in contracts this week.
Okay, so tell me more about that. So what happened there?
One of them was a big commercial deal. So I had a $1.6 million commercial deal that we were a week away from closing, and they had another inspector come through just to double check, and they came back with a ton of fixes to make on the property, and they just couldn't come to an agreement on price.
Okay.
So that was hard. That was a heartache.
And how is that in terms of, did that affect the relationship with the agent on their side at all? Was there anything there, or was it just like affects your emotional status and your emotional state?
He was disappointed. He was really disappointed. Again, it was not combated, but it was confronted by my ability to really talk through the whole thing. And, kind of at that point, it is what it is. We can't come together on it. So as much as it hurts every party involved, we kind of just had to move through it.
Got it. And do you feel like you left that relationship having a good relationship with that agent in terms of if it comes up again?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. He knew. I mean, he knew. He's been on the other side of this stuff too. He's a pretty experienced commercial broker. So
Yeah.
The one that hurt the worst though was just a regular, single family transaction deal. And it was more about the client than the other agent involved. As far as whether or not to build a bridge or burn it, because this particular transaction, there was a contract for $300,000. We did inspections, and they asked for $20,000 to get reduced on inspections. I talked to the agent, and we got that to happen. They actually did a $20,000 in this market. They did a $20,000 reduction and agreed to it. They signed the deal, and the next morning at like 5 a.m., I get a text message. We had a family emergency. We can't buy the house.
Were they already stuck under contract though?
So they signed it. They signed the amendment. Yeah. So I fought and got her this contract in this market because I knew the agent really well on the other side, and we worked out a deal. And I got her this thing, and
so how do you handle that? So you knew the agent on the other side too. Like, this is someone who you've already developed a relationship with. It's unlikely a single deal is going to sour that relationship, but you never know. So what's your first step? How do you handle that?
I tell them right away that we have to back out. I don't kind of beat around the bush about it at all. We have to, this is the scenario. These are all the facts. This is what happened. And I try as much as I can not to put my spin on it or my emotion behind it, because at that point, I'm talking to what I think she wants to hear instead of just presenting what needs to be presented. That's one really key thing that I've learned over the years, is that no matter how I feel about something, I'm trying to distance myself completely out from what I'm presenting as information, because then I'm tarnishing and tainting their response to what I'm saying.
Yeah. And I think you just had something really, really powerful there, which is you're also wanting to be aware of not just saying what you believe they want to hear, which as agents, it's so common. And I see it all the time, because a lot of agents were people pleasers, right? And like, you want to soften it and make it easier, but you have to tackle it head on. I don't know if anyone's watching this, if you have stories like this or things you want to share, or type in the chat box, or if this resonates, I'm curious. But that's really is where, if you are upfront with the way you presented it, you said you acknowledge it quickly, you presented facts, you laid out your plan.
Yeah, and I try not to say things like, I know this is going to upset you, or I have bad news, or any of those things where I'm predicting what their emotion is going to be, and I'm setting them up for what I think they're going to react to. I have no idea if it's bad news or not. They could have loved the fact that we're backing out of the contract. So I'm just,
you mean if they thought maybe the seller was regretting giving the concession of the 20,000.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that's a good takeaway. So you avoid prefacing what they should feel, saying this. Hey, I've got bad news. Hey, I got to warn you. Hey.
Yeah. Or good news, like, oh, I have good news, or this is great. It's like that. It's like never. It's like when you're getting to know a client for the first time, and they say, I need a smaller house, because and then you say something like, well, I'm glad that you're moving to a smaller house, and then they say, well, it's because I'm getting a divorce, and so instead of like predicting or injecting myself into the situation, I try to step back as much as I possibly can.
Right, but back to the concept of, I think, emotional neutrality. Right, you really, if your goal is to create the connection and build the partnership, the more you can stick to facts and keep your own emotions aside, the better chance you're going to have of actually keeping that relationship or maintaining the relationship.
Right, with the client and the agent.
Okay,
right.
Interesting. So how do you handle this one? I got a text message the other night. Actually, my partner did, from an agent that they didn't get their offer accepted, right? Had multiple offers on a property, came down to like, out of the 15 offers we had, we were on the listing side, came down to 2 offers, and both parties accepted, exactly what it was, a multiple counter offer. Both buyers accepted what the seller was putting out there. And so the offer that wasn't chosen, the agent was incredibly frustrated. And I get his frustration. I do. But the text that came over was like a pretty, it was a pretty aggressive text. And like, there's a small industry. We'll remember this all, tables turn and we'll be around. And it was really interesting. And my first reaction just was to get defensive. But then I wanted to take a beat and pause and obviously, and understand empathetically where they're coming from. How do you respond to that? Do you respond? What do you do at that point?
Yeah. The first thing is that I never respond immediately to anything.
Okay.
Like, I think responding immediately to, especially through text message, is just a failing policy to live by. Because, like you said, you had a reaction, and then you recognized your reaction. Well, most people don't wait until that pause happens before a response is made. That's why Twitter is what it is. Right? I mean, that's exactly why Twitter is the way it is.
Totally.
So waiting for your response to subside and actually get out of your emotional body and go back into your rational body and like figure out really what's going on, because you can't do that in a split second. You have to rationalize and think about what's going on, or you're just going to say something that you don't mean. And it's so what was going on with that person? Why did they send that? And why, what was their reaction based on?
So it's interesting. When you say it, it sounds so simple to pause, but why do so few people do it?
It's simple, but extremely difficult. Yeah. It's easy to say, not easy to do.
Interesting.
It takes practice. It takes a lot of practice, but these are all incredible tools to try on, and things that you can do that you don't have to tell anybody about. You don't have to. You just see how it works for yourself.
So you're not saying respond back and say, "I'm going to wait." That was an irritating text. I'm going to give myself 20 minutes before I respond to you. You don't say that.
That may not be the most effective thing to
do. Fair enough. Interesting. So
in that situation, what happened? Like, what did you do?
Well, so it came to my partner. So I didn't have the response, and she had actually did pause before responding and just sent a really empathetic response back. Mm-hmm. I mean, she's a pretty naturally empathetic person. And we talked, and that was another tip then. We talked about it before she responded. So not only did she pause, but we talked, which allowed some processing of the emotions reaction behind it. And it is a small, I mean, I'm in San Diego, I'm in a big city. There's lots and lots of realtors, but it is a small enough industry. You're going to bump into people. You want to have, I think, more than even needing the relationships to be strong in real life, it's more of the internal sense of self that I'm a good person. I'm not doing wrong to other people, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So did that agent think that you didn't send a response to them, and that was the problem?
No. We responded. They knew that they knew the other offer that their offer wasn't accepted. They were just frustrated that their offer wasn't accepted.
Got it.
It's just there's a lot of frustration in the market right now. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of frustration from clients and agents work really hard for their clients. And then they're worried that like you said before, they're worried that maybe that client will end up not buying anything or not working with them or working with someone else or disappearing. And I think there's a lot of potential fear. It doesn't have to be. There's agents that are still crushing in this market. I know I'm watching this. I don't want to leave you feeling like this market sucks. There's a lot of people selling a lot of houses. I was on a call this morning with another buddy of mine. He sold like 11 or 12 houses in the last month and a half. He's like, I got to go out. I'm going to make this happen, and started diving deep into off-market properties. But I think there is still a lot of just general unease that's floating around.
Yeah. Everything's magnified right now. Everything's magnified because when we're in a market like this, everything is very unsteady. It feels sometimes like we don't know what's going to happen in the next 6 months. In a more even market, you can kind of say, like, we know for a little, it feels a little bit more safe. We kind of know what's going to happen in the next 6 months. This really feels like we may not know.
Right. So when things are magnified, is it like the way that people have always worked may not be the best way? Do you think agents need to consciously shift some of the things they're doing to focus more on building partnerships? Or, I mean, what do you do when things are magnified like this?
Take a step back. Like I said before, know that your emotions are going to be elevated at this point in time, and understand that that's kind of the emotional presence that you're in, and work from that instead. So, yeah, I don't know.
Interesting. And by the way, if in the chat box, Tracy, who is asking something just about turning your camera off, we can't see you. Don't worry. Whatever's going on, you're asking how do you turn your camera off? We do not see you, so you are safe. And Jake, if there's any questions from Facebook, let me know the issues, things, stories people want to chat about. But I've really been racking my brain on that whole. How do you, in the middle of a transaction, how do you negotiate, but like really firmly, but then keep that relationship from going south? So I think we have pausing, we have taking, as best you can, keeping it separate from personal. Does it start with the energy and atmosphere that you bring to the transaction, or is it more responding to what comes from the other side? What do you think?
Either way, it's all about you can only control what you're doing. So whether you're responding or presenting, those are both things that you have control over. So I always go by, I whatever the most difficult, uncomfortable thing is to be said at any given moment, that's the thing that I try to get out.
How do you do that? Okay. So that's an interesting thing. So is it, when you say the hardest thing, is it the thing that needs to be said, or how do you define that? Tell me more. I like that idea.
Well, we kind of touched on it before. Like if I'm talking to like somebody, another agent in a conversation or a difficult negotiation, I always confront that situation first. So I say something like, I can see that this is getting a little bit heated, and emotions are getting a little bit elevated right now, and it's getting a little tense. Should we, do you want to stop this for a minute and take 10 minutes and pick it up in 10 minutes, or do you want to keep going, or how do you want to get through this? Because, we're starting to get into a territory where it's not about our clients anymore.
That's a really good, you guys write that one down. We're starting to get into a territory that's not about our clients anymore. That's a good one. How do people respond if you say something like that?
It's almost always positively. I've never had anyone just like, I mean, what's the worst that can happen? Is someone's gonna, hang up on you or scream and yell, but you know where they're coming from. They're coming from a point of frustration. It's not like it happened in a vacuum. Somebody, like, emotions were high. Something was said. It's like if somebody gets upset and hangs up on you, they're going to call back in 10 minutes and apologize.
Have you had agents get upset and hang up on you? I don't think I've had many in my career. Okay, just checking. All right, so changing gears quickly just for a few minutes. I have a note written down that in terms of burning bridges and building partnerships, that's our theme for the day, just about ethics. I'm a little nervous to even go too deep into ethics because there's so many discussions in lab coat agents and other things that you'll see 300, 400 comments where like half the people think it's acceptable, other people do not. And it's an interesting industry we live in where there are things that are not clear cut enough that there's enough gray area that even if you feel something is 100% one way, yet there's such a discussion. How do you think ethics plays in for, whether you're burning a bridge or building a partnership with the other agent?
That's a great question. well, to start, I think that in the market that we're in, with everything moving so quickly, I think there's a tendency for people to compromise a little bit, right? I mean, I think that's a natural thing to think about.
Right.
If I have to get this thing done for my client, and if it means that I have to go into a gray area a little bit, is that really going to affect anyone? Right. And people start questioning their own morality, and maybe move the line a little bit.
Well, that's what I've been noticing is it's not just necessarily that they're moving the line. It's that they seem to justify, well, because the market is this way, I need to do X, Y, Z. And we won't get into what X, Y, Z is because that's the whole part that I don't want to even go there on this part. But I think it's really fascinating just to be aware of, right? As you're in market conditions like this, you see more things that are potentially questionably ethical, or that, and then the justification behind it that feels like, well, I'm doing this because it's okay. That justification.
Yeah. There's one example that I have that's kind of bland, and I don't think it'll offend anyone.
Okay.
So when you're working with a buyer at this point in time, and that there's 40 offers on every single house, typically the way that I've always run my business is that we're going to put in an offer on a house and wait until that offer gets accepted or denied. And if it gets denied, we put an offer on another house. In this market, and that's the gold standard on how you operate, right? But in this market, that is almost an impossibility.
Right.
And so you almost have to have buyers have 5 offers out at any given time, and hopefully one of them hits at one point. And that way of conducting business and before was just unacceptable.
Right.
So is that shifting your ethics, and is that shifting your ethics, or is that just changing with the times and doing what you're fiduciarily expected to do for your client?
Yeah. Tracy's raised her hand. Type in the box if you want, but I'm with you. That one, I feel like that one is changing the time, but I'm sure there would be people. There might be people on here. We could have a debate. But that is something that you shouldn't. That is still it would be an ethical violation. But to me, it's like, yeah, that is changing with the market, right? That's interesting because you're right. That is something that has shifted over the.
Yeah, and do you tell the listing agent that my offer? I
have 6 other offers out for the client. No.
Yeah, I mean, right.
That's the biggest question ethically. That actually is really interesting. It's not even that you're doing it. It's that you would never go to the listing agent and say, I've got 6 other offers over this client. Although if the listing agent asked, I assume most people would say, yes, I have other offers, but truly probably most agents wouldn't even judge you at this point, given that they know it. But it is interesting how much goes unsaid and what the changes in what people would say. Because a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, if you had a buyer submit an offer on your property and they told you, I've got offers out in 5 other properties, you'd be like, I'm not going to tell the seller to accept that one. That's crazy.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting.
But now, I would be surprised if buyers don't have multiple offers out there.
Right.
And you have to play that game.
That was a really good example. That's not going to probably be too. I mean, we can ruffle feathers if we want, but that was a perfect example, Jim.
Yeah.
I love it. All right. If you guys have examples of things, anyone watching that is a shift in potentially in ethics, I'm curious what they are. This is really what we wanted to talk about for today. This is most of the idea behind this today was just the awareness of what's going on in the industry, self-awareness, awareness of others, how you respond to situations, taking that pause, taking that beat. There are some really good takeaways from what you had, Jim. Is there anything else you want to add in to kind of pull it together?
Nothing's coming to mind.
Okay, cool. That was our goal, by the way. We wanted to keep this to about 30 minutes so we could be really focused on what you need to do. If you guys like this, put comments on Facebook, comments on YouTube, wherever this is later, back on Lab Coats. But thank you everyone for listening. I hope this is an interesting discussion that allows you to be a little more self-aware, even for yourself, or if you're dealing with someone in a transaction, instead of jumping to judgment as to why they're not doing things the right way, XYZ, just being empathetic and looking at where they're coming from and how you can impact your own behavior to then create a better relationship on the other side. That was the whole goal today.
Yeah. Never assume that you know what other people are thinking, because almost 100% of the time you're wrong.
I love that. And if you're in the chat box, well, this recording is going to be up on the YouTube channel later. So guys, enjoy your Friday. Good to see everybody. Thanks for being here.
Good seeing you, Jesse.
Good to see you too, Jim. Bye, guys.
Yeah. Take care, everyone.
Produced by the Agent Collective Media Network.